Okay guys, so we've got a very exciting tutorial for you today. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to build a world in Horizons, which I know many of you who are very new to this probably haven't even tried to do this before. And I still think the biggest mistake I made on Horizons was putting off building for months. I wish I'd got in sooner, because as soon as I realized how easy it was, I was absolutely kicking myself. It's one of these things that's very simple to pick up. But then to master it, can take time, and you're going to need help from the community. You're going to need to talk to people about building and learn about building practices, learn some tricks from people. So yeah, do definitely start your journey as soon as you can if you've got any interest in it. I always jokingly say to people, if you enjoyed playing The Sims when you were a kid, then you're gonna absolutely love building in Horizons, because it's quite similar, but also it's lovely that you can just place down some blocks, and then before you know it, you've created these crazy constructions or like elaborate sort of designs, and you're actually wandering around them, which is magical, and you're showing them to people as well. And you can sort of build living rooms, you can build crazy art projects, you can build entirely scripted sort of experiences. Really as wild as your imagination can get. And we're going to go through some of the sort of the tips and tricks. So just what we're going to cover on this session today, guys. I'm going to go through a little list. So we're going to go through just basically a little bit about building worlds in general, things to bear in mind as you go through, and just a few little concepts. And then after that, we're going to go into actually creating a world. And then after that, we can go into sort of like getting around. How do you move around it? How do you traverse your world where you're editing it? Then we're going to go into the build menu, and we'll cover off some of the elements in there. Then we're going to look at the command wheels, which you'll understand what they are when you see them. So really past that, we're then moving on to actually how do I move objects from a scene, rotate them, resize them, etc. Then how do I color them with materials and textures? Then we're going to do some more advanced stuff on the command wheels, things which we didn't do in section 6. Then we're going to go quickly look at object properties as well. And then we're going to look at just simple animations. And then we're going to look at how you manage multiple objects. And that's going to cap off, I think, our session for today. And I'll probably do more depending if you guys find this useful. Let me know in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, etc. These kind of things really egg me on to do more of this kind of content. So yes, please do that if you haven't already, and if you get something useful out of it. So without any further ado, so building worlds. Yeah, so about 2 years ago I started building worlds in Horizons, and it's tricky at first, right? The first 20 minutes, if you don't know what you're doing, is frustrating, very frustrating. If you have sort of a tutor going through it, or if you look at a YouTube video, then that will make that process a bit easier. I mean, it's still a little awkward at first. It does take about 20 minutes. So I just want to give a good shout out to the people that helped me when I first started on YouTube. There are authors such as Lakes, Garrett Sky, Sensei J, and also I think Morgan Chin put together an excellent tutorial as well. And so with that, I think it's my turn to sort of maybe put something back to the community now. So I'm going to hopefully take you through that in the next sort of 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to keep it quite lightweight. So it's going to focus on perhaps the first day's worth of sort of building that you do, and that'll set you up nicely without making it too complicated at this stage. So we're going to cover building with primitive shapes. So what is a primitive shape? Well, it's a simple shape. It's like a building block. It could be a tube or a tuboid. It could be a cylinder. It could be a sphere. Lots of these basic shapes that when you smash them together, you actually create sort of some wonderful things. Like cubewoods could create walls, for example, or spheres. Spheres could be just simple balls that roll across the ground, or you could put them together with cuboids and create even more fantastical shapes. But there's a lot in there. There's an entire sort of section of your menu that contains the primitives, which we'll go through in section 3. Also, on top of primitive shapes, there are these sort of complex meshes, which you'll see in the asset store. Now, the asset store is currently free. It does not charge anything. I don't know if there's any plans to in the future, but you can just go in there and pull out sort of pre-made objects. So rather than just your primitive sort of cubes and making them yourself, you can go in and say, I want a sofa and I want a coffee table, and you can choose from the, you know, rare things that are in there and just place them down. Now, the core difference between primitive shapes and meshes, and this leads me on to the next section, scene complexity. It's not an unlimited buffet, unfortunately, guys. You do, per scene, have a limit of how many objects you can squeeze in, and that is at time of filming, that is something like 3,000. So you can't go above 3,000 objects. And in terms of what they refer to as a geometric complexity, those the complexity of the objects. There's no hard and fast rule, but the meshes, the complex meshes, tend to be more, I use the term expensive. They have far more triangles making them up, and therefore they're more difficult for your headsets to render. So if you literally just keep using nothing but those complex meshes, like vegetation is a particularly good example. If you have too many sort of trees in your scene, you're going to find you're going to run out of that space very, very quickly, and you won't be able to add any more things. So that's the primitives versus meshes. Primitives are pretty good with it, and in fact the video team has put together a fantastic geometric complexity world, which I'll try and put a little screenshot up for here. That's worth a look. It gives you an idea of like what's the difference between a pyramid or a cube or a sphere or a star shape, and you can see like, well, actually you can get, I think it's something like 50 cuboids for 1% of geometric complexity in your scene, but then with the stars you might find you can only get, say, 5 of them. I can't remember the exact figures, but it's worth keeping that in mind when you do start having to manage complexity. The official Meta Horizons YouTube actually is really good. There is a 20-minute video on managing complexity. Do check that out. That's a really good primer once you've been building for a few days. So okay, moving on to dynamics. So what do we mean when we say dynamics? We mean like interactions and animations. So not every object in your scene will be still. You may choose to have certain objects which are moving around. They're referred to as dynamics. They move around, and so again, that's a separate cost, because the positions of things are really between everyone's headsets. So particularly the more players you have in your world, if you create a map that is 32 players, then it means you can't have quite so many dynamics in there, because that's a lot of tracked objects that their positions and angles and scales and colors are being sort of sent between everyone's headsets. So that's really important to understand. It's why you tend to find that like gaming worlds with a lot of interactable objects tend to be lower player counts, and that's to manage that element of it. So yeah, that leads me on then nicely as well to user count. So whilst I know everyone would love to have 32 players, which is the current maximum in Horizons that you can have in any space, unfortunately the cost with 32 players is that you can't really put much in your scene, and generally you're going with mostly static primitives to be able to accommodate that. You'll notice that 32 player worlds tend to have very simple sort of like stage setups or simple floors and not too much detail going on. Then we move on to sort of like performance as well. So this is not so much for new users, but it's one that you should be thinking about, is that I think people again want to have 32 player worlds where they put every single thing in all at once, and that's not great. That can lead to really long load times, and also if you have a lot of like animations going on or particle effects, which we won't cover particles on this video, but then you could find that you've got people running at horrible frame rates. Now the ideal, I understand, is above 69. 69 is a good sort of average frame rate to be getting. That's very smooth. As soon as that frame rate drops down to sort of like the jitters of the sort of, I would say 30 and below, you're going to start making people feel a bit ill sometimes. Not everyone's affected by that, but many are. I've seen people leave worlds in quite an angry state because of the frame rate being so low. So be kind to your visitors. Make sure you push for performance over anything else. Okay. And also, when you create worlds, you can now access them on mobile and web. So that's another thing. When you build your worlds, there is a way to toggle people's perspectives into first or third person on mobile or web. But generally just be a little mindful that when you're building, also think about how you're going to build it for people on mobile. So I won't cover too much of that on this session, but it's one of those things in your mind that, yeah, try and test your world on mobile if you can. Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to move on to create a world. So I'm going to just pull up a video here so you'll be able to see in the main menu. You basically go right down the bottom, and there's in the middle there's a box and a circle icon right in the middle, and that is the create screen. So if you click on that using your trigger, then that'll take you into your create screen where your existing worlds will appear, but you just want to click the new world at the top right, or I think it's just create new. I can't remember the exact name of it, it'll be in the video. And then when you do that, there's many different templates in there that you can build from. Personally, I recommend you go from blank, because there's a lot of template worlds out there. It's always nice to start fresh because very often you end up just deleting it all anyway, so it's just saving you the hassle of having to delete the template. There are, however, some scripted worlds out there that are fun to just create and look at privately and just there's a lot of laser tag templates. There's a million bloody laser tag games out there, but at the same time, it's always good to understand the makeups of that thing once you get a little bit more intermediate and you want to start getting more adventurous. But for now, like I say, we're keeping it simple. Okay, so once you hit that create new world button, that'll take you into the new world. Great. Okay, so now we're going to move on to section 2, which is getting around. So getting around, what do we mean when we say that? Well, if I hold up my controller to the screen, I can see there's a little man just underneath my thumb, okay? And that is the build mode thing. So how do I activate that? I pull the stick on the right controller towards me, and that takes me then into build mode. So that's build mode. To get back into preview, however, on my left controller, you'll see that there's a little walking man there. So if I was to just push the left controller stick forward, there we go. So I'm back in preview mode. Now, what is the difference between the two? Well, preview is for walking around and seeing sort of the shape of your build, making sure the doors are in the right place, making sure that triggers, react when they go off, and just generally exploring and testing. And then if build mode is for actually placing objects, so you'll see what happens now if I pull this stick backwards again on my right controller, build mode. Okay, it's a lot of options here, and we will cover them off in just a sec. So if I may have to, this blue guy here, I'm just gonna move you back a sec, I'm sorry. Okay, so this blue guy here is a spawn point. Now you can only see him when you're in build mode, but this controls the place and the angle at which the player spawns in. You can then move on to more advanced stuff with these spawn points, where you can have triggered areas that throw people to other spawn points. That is a thing, but we won't be covering that on this video. Okay, so what next? Teleporting into preview? Sure. Okay, so I mentioned that you've got this little running man here. If you want to spawn in anywhere in your map, you just push the stick forward and hold it forward, and you'll notice a line comes out of there, right? And that line points to the point on the floor. So wherever I let go of that is going to be where I spawn. And you can see it, I'm all the way over here next to the edge, and quite far away from where I should be. So if I just run back, that's very useful for getting around. That's a tip I didn't really pick up until about my second week of building, so I'm giving you that one now. It might be useful. You'll see me using that a lot on this video. Okay guys, so now we're going to cover moving, turning, and scaling. So we're talking about moving and turning and scaling ourselves to move around build mode. So obviously we just walk around as normal in preview, but when we step it to build mode, so you can see so what we do, right, if we want to move, let's just let's take one of our hands, which with either, and there's a grip button on the side of the controller. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend our hand out in front of us. We're going to hold down that side grip button, and you can see it, there's a sort of a black, and so a black thingy appeared around us. So if I now pull myself towards, like I'm reaching out and grabbing a rock or something, but I'm grabbing thin air. And if I do that, you can actually see that I can pull myself around. Yeah. So that's how we move, okay? And then to turn, we hold both hands out so reasonably in front of us. And then we hold down the side triggers on both. Screen goes black again, and this little number comes up in the middle. And all we have to do is imagine we've grabbed a pole, and we're going to use that pole to pull ourselves around. You know, we're floating in space, and we're grabbing that pole. So we're turning our hands round in sort of a clockwise or an anti-clockwise direction, and that turns us. Okay, so reach out and grab and pull. That's move, and we can do that in any direction. And then if I pull triggers and turn, and this takes a bit of getting used to, and I think it'll be awkward for the first hour, but eventually it becomes very intuitive, and before you know it, you'll be flipping out all over the place, moving, what have you. The last thing I'm going to teach you in there is about scaling, right? So obviously when you're working on little objects, that's great, you know, you can pick them up and move them around, etc. But what if you wanted to get down and you really wanted to get intricate into the detail of something? Well, again, both triggers, hold them down, and then you pull your hands apart, and it scales you down, right? Scales you right down. And so you can combine the pulling as well, so you can pull yourself downwards. And now we are tiny, okay? But then if I both triggers again on the side and I pull them together, and see, it makes me grow really big, isn't it? Which is great if you're dealing with like sort of big exterior buildings or whatever. But yeah, so little, big, so much fun. Okay, so yeah, that's section 2 really done. So now we're going to move on to the build menu. Okay, so in the build menu, I'm going to pull it open now. Okay, so if I just open that build menu. Oh, by the way, if it appears halfway through something, you can click and drag the build menu around. That's absolutely fine. You can do that just to give yourself some clarity. So inside the build menu now, and also as well, if you actually click it and then you push the right stick left or right, it expands or contracts it to sort of match wherever size you need it. That's another quick tip that you can see there's appearing. Okay, so this is the build menu. So what we have in here is we have primitives. Okay, so inside the shapes section here, and this along the bottom you've got these tabs. This is the build section. So in the shapes you've got primitives are cube, spheres, cones, cylinder, ramp, pyramid, tube, and then you can use the stick to scroll down in here as well. So there's not many of them, but then they are simple shapes. Then you've got gizmos as a separate section, which that will cover things like, you know, triggers, and triggers are useful for setting off events when people enter them. We won't be covering that on this episode, but we'll definitely be doing them on different episodes. And sounds as well, we've definitely got that. We have, going back into scripts actually. So going back into gizmos, we've got the script gizmo in here somewhere. That's how you start writing automation. So for example, you can have a trigger, which when a person enters the script would say, well, when a player enters it, then make something appear, disappear, make a sound go off or something, right? So yeah, that's a good one to know. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump across to then the asset library. By the way, actually a quick mention, there is a section called assets here. These are your personal assets. So if you make any objects and you want to save them to transfer them to another world, you'd come into the asset section, and then you can actually so wrap these objects up and send them in as an asset. Now I'm not going to cover that on this video because I didn't start using that until probably my second week. So I'd really made something worthwhile that I wanted to put into a secondary world. So yeah, the other bit that I mentioned coming away from primitives then is the asset library. It's this sort of little bag down here, which is like, we call it the asset store as well. You can see you've got some really kind of cool things in here, like, you know, basket of fruit, for example, laptop. You can search for things. So for example, if I wanted a desk, I could just search for, desk. Great, and see what comes up. Well, I've got an office desk here that I can sort of pull out. That's great. I can just place that down. You'll notice that it's quite free placement. We'll be covering snapping very shortly later in this video. But yeah, essential skill for lining things up, and it'll make your life so much easier. So stay with me. So yeah, that's the asset store again. Or the asset library. Everything in here is currently free. I haven't heard of any plans to make that sort of chargeable thing, but yeah, go nuts. There's a lot of things in there, like kitchen equipment, lamps. There's even sort of like sometimes games and toys in here as well, which you could just sort of place into your world. Always fun. Okay, so that's the built menu really. Oh, there's one more thing. Sorry, colors. So there's a color section which we'll be covering in the paint section. So you can see in here you've got some palettes. You've got a bold discovery palette, playful dreams, joyful, or if you want more control, even a manual color slider, so you can select your paint colors and go wild with them. And we'll cover this a little bit more further down. I think we've got a section on materials and textures. So okay, so if I just close that now, so that's my left menu button should do that. Okay, so in terms of adding objects then, so let's open this back up then. So to add an object into your scene, in this build menu, what you do is you grab the object by pointing at it and holding down the trigger. You don't have to get too close. You can do it a fair old one always. Hold your hand right back and still hold the trigger, and then place an object. Hold it, place an object. And that's that. And to place meshes from the asset store, you kind of saw me do that a moment ago. Blind and do it again. So if I wanted an oak tree, for example, Teslud's gone. Like, oh, there he is. So if I wanted an oak tree, I can sort of place him in, and wow, that's huge. So let's just. Oh no, I think I'm throwing you around. I'm so sorry. Okay. So let's just get out of there before we end up in more trouble. So now we're going to go into the command wheels. This is section 5, guys. So what we're going to do is, if I show you to clean up here a bit, we'll go through how to delete things in just a moment. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, these are the command wheels, okay? So these correspond to the directions of your sort of analog sticks on your controller. What you see here, on the left one, obviously we mentioned preview mode before. And then we've got our undo button and our redo button and our slap button. Now we'll cover that shortly. On the right controller, we've got the sort of the grab, okay, and that's our default for sort of picking up objects and moving them. So if I wanted to, oh, it's a bit tricky to grab. If I want to pick up something and move it around, I just click it while I'm in grab mode, okay, that's very important. Then we have paint mode, which is this, which you see changes it to the currently selected color from our paint menu. So you can see if I sort of change that. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be covering painting again in one of the next 2 sections. So, but I just wanted to show you that is there. Duplicating as well. So if I sort of click the stick to the right, it's now in duplicate mode. So if I was to grab an object, I should pick the worst object in the world. Let me just expand that. Yeah. So if I grab that, I can duplicate that, and I can duplicate as many as I need to create great copies. Great. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to delete those. Wonderful. Okay. And also, yeah, undo. See if I didn't want to delete that thing that I just did. I flick the left stick to the left. And he's come back. I can do it again. Sorry, we've got an undo buffer that just keeps going. Hit it. Or if I'm like, no, actually, do not tease with mine. I want it all back. I flick the stick to the right, and they come back again. And then the last move I did was actually to delete them. So there we go. Let's redo all the way back up. Wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to look at how to move, rotate, and scale objects. So if I go and grab an object out of my build menu, so again, that's flat button there to on my 7, sorry, to open the build menu, and I've just dragged a box out. So I'm moving the object freely. I'm clicking and I'm moving him around. If I want to rotate him, well, obviously, if I rotate my hand while I'm grabbing him, yeah, I'm straight. I'm rotating him. And then if I want to scale him, I probably get my other controller at the same time. and I move it slightly into it, and I hold down that trigger as well. So I've got both triggers held down, and when I move them apart, it gets bigger. And I move them together, it gets smaller. So let's just leave it about that size. Okay, so now we're going to cover snapping. As promised. So you'll notice that at the moment, every time I sort of pick up and drag, it's very free. There's no precision there. If I sort of have two objects, how do I line them up? That's an absolute nightmare. You know, it's like, oh, you could spend all day doing that and lining them up, but we'll never quite get them to sort of stick together. So what we do is we turn on snapping. So what snapping does, put myself back into grab mode, is I can grab an object, and you'll notice as I move it, there's a sort of a persuasion on it. It's trying to move it. And this is called incremental snapping. It's basically like there's angles and there's movements as well. So as I move it, you can see it's not completely free. It's these little sort of white sparkles that you see everywhere are sort of the grid lines, and they're all over the place. And they're a definite measurement. And you can adjust that measurement, of course. There are ways to do it. They're in your build menu, so you can find them. I won't be showing you on this video. But so that's incremental snapping. But likewise also with resizing, we have incremental snapping. So it makes it a lot easier to take objects and then sort of, if you wanted to place them down about at the same place, then make sure they're like, you know, half the length or full length or whatever, right? You can kind of line it up. But wait, you know, but we also want that there are features in here that allow us to be a bit more precise with this, actually. So if I was to get, let me just jumble this object up a sec. So you see how these little snap points against the object? You can actually grab by one of these snap points. You notice there are every sort of extent and midpoints. There's one directly in the middle, you can probably see there, but there's one sort of halfway along this side, at the top, bottom, all over the place, really. They're amazing. So the slap handles are there, and I can pick one up and I can literally just move it to the slap handle on another object. I'm just using one hand to do this. And then that was moving. Then I can actually use these little boxes here to actually move to resize it. I'm sorry. So that brings me nicely onto actually another thing. These little teller things. You've got your axes. Every object has its own local axis. And you've got the blue Z, which goes in a plus direction, and a negative, obviously, in the opposite. You've got the Y as well, which is the green, and you've got the X, which is the red, and again, plus, minus. So on each one of these axes, once you move, you only have to hover your controller over it, and you'll notice that, you know, you've got to rotate, and you've got to scale, and then you've got to move. So if I grab the move and I just slide it, it only slides, but no matter what my hand is doing, as long as I'm holding down that trigger, it's sliding across the one axis that I'm telling it to. And likewise, I can do that with any one of these, and that allows me to do the same. Also, scaling works that way too. You can absolutely rescale things that way. So also, if I scale this here, I want to scale it to exactly on this edge. There we go. And I want to scale this to exactly on this edge. I can do exactly that too. And I want to scale this out too. And I want to scale this to only halfway. Well, you see, I can snap it to the halfway point then. So that's now half the width. Half the depth even, I'm sorry, but the width is the same. Okay, so that's that. If I wanted to then move this on top of here, I can indeed do that. If I wanted to put this central, I grab the middle snap point here, and I plop this just here. There we go, I've made myself look an upside down T shape. Why not? But again, perfectly snapped together, and if I come back in here, you can see there is, yeah, they are right against each other. That's looking wonderful. Okay. Cool. So, I'm gonna just remove that. So what we're gonna do now, actually, do I have a seal on deletion? Oh no, I'm gonna cover deletion right now. I am very, very quickly. So if I have a cube and I think, right, I don't want that, I want to delete it. So what I can do is, if I pick it up using my controller, you notice there's a trash can down the bottom. So while I'm holding it, I pull the stick backwards, deletes it. Okay. With painting, I'm going to cover painting there. So can select a color, and I can click on an object in a color exactly that color, so I can change the color, set it, and paint it whatever I want next. There are some materials, right, which are kind of cool to know about. So solid is probably the basic sort of map. When you'll come across, there's a little bit of shading on it. You'll see as I move around, it kind of creates just a solid sort of like almost a painted style face. But what if you wanted to do something else? So like you could do plastic. Plastic gives it like a shiny quality, which you can see it's a bit shinier. That does actually look a lot better on curved surfaces. You'll definitely notice the shine coming in. But we can go for metal as well. Now metal gives it like a really dark shine, okay? So it does make the whole thing go quite dark, but it gives it more of a metallic sheen to it. And then beyond that, you've got I'm gonna go to unlit next. Unlit means do not apply any lighting to it, which means there's no shading. It's literally just the color, no matter what angle you look at it from. You can't really see the edges. It's just it's an unlit object. And the final one, which is worth knowing about, is glow. Now glow is very, very useful. So you'll notice that glow actually, it's what we call an emissive surface. So when it does it actually casts light out to other surfaces. Now during a sort of a daylight map, you can't really see that. I mean, if I get it close, you're nearly able to see the sort of big haze there, but you can also change the amount of glow that it gives off. Now remember, when you do that, you also change what the color looks like, but it does provide more of a glow quotient, which you do see. Actually, that's very useful if you're creating like sort of little lights or candles, because you can sort of just put static lights on everything, which some word of warning, you can't, if you have a glow on an animated object, it won't apply, and I'll quickly show you that now. I haven't really covered this, but if I go animated, you'll see that this is the static object, and this does have that light fall off below it. But this one, because it's animated, does not, and that's because animated objects can't use static lighting. Dynamic lighting is a thing, that's a separate thing that I won't be covering on this tutorial, but it's in the Gizmos menu and allows you to create dynamic lights that can move around. Okay, so yeah, that's materials, and I'm done textures. Actually, I'm sorry, let's bring one of those back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to sort of solid, and in textures I've got 11 textures to play with. At the moment that's all we've got, and we're hoping at some point in the future we'll get some more. But if I paint that, you can kind of see that's created a nice sort of texture on there. And this one, again, a different texture. This one's sort of like a little bit of a wood grain going on. So if I apply like a nice brown to that or something, ooh, Jesus, too bright. You can kind of see how you could make a table out of that. Except obviously go wild with the colours. So right, let's move on to some more advanced features of the command wheels, guys. So what we're going to do here is in your command wheels, you've got this little lock icon, okay? So once you start really building out your scene, you might accidentally kick things, or you're having trouble getting to things because you're constantly accidentally selecting the wrong thing, and it's like you're getting a right old mess. So what I can do is, if you pull a stick on the right down to the lock, you can actually move your mouse pointer into something and notice the yellow border. When you tick that trigger, boop, it actually goes red, and you now can't grab it. So that means you're free to grab whatever you want without fear of actually grabbing a locked object. And objects stay locked until you unlock them, so I can do it for this one as well. And you can see there you go, I can't move either of these, but if I wanted to unlock just this one, reposition it, and then relock it, yes, I can do that. It's now relocked. Perfect. Okay, so array is the other one as well. Now array is fantastic. Oh, this is one of my favorite tools, right? I'm just gonna quickly unlock these. So if I, for example, place this down, and this takes a bit of skill to get used to, but it is there. So, array is this little thing here on your left controller, and the way it works is if you take an object, and I'm going to duplicate this object, right? Duplicate it like that, okay? Now just twist it in, reposition it somewhere else. If I now hit array, it's going to apply exactly the same twist and reposition as I just did. So I can create some really fun styles just by hitting that stick right constantly. And that's not the best example, right? But if you're making staircases, staircases, it's an unbelievably good trick. So for example, if I resize this so it's flat now, and if I go into duplicate and I grab a snap point and I pull this up to here, okay, so I've created one duplicate with one operation to line it up. Now if I hit the array tool, watch what happens. It's created my staircase every time I do that. Wonderful. So I can actually walk up it then. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, love it. So that's how the array tool works, guys. So that's advanced command wheel. Object properties I'm going to cover as well. So I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer to you lot. So there you go. Oh, sorry, that was multi-select again. We'll be covering that in the next section. Still, the problem is I do these things automatically now, as you will as well. So bear with me. So to do object properties, I just hover over something and see this little dot that appears in the command wheel. So if I flip the stick forward, it opens up a nice big black dialog. So if I now click this title area, not the words, okay, I can't drag it. If I do that, I have to click on the sort of little area just surrounding it, so above it or below it, and I can click and drag it so it's somewhere a little bit more convenient to me. And you can see here, like, that we've got a whole lot of things in here. Like, we've got visible. If I turn visible off, well, you know, the object's still there, but it's actually completely invisible. So you'll see on the main camera, you can't see that object there, but it's still there. It's still completely collidable. So, for example, if I just, if I just sort of remove this, I've created myself an invisible wall now. So if I stand here, you can see I'm just sort of hovering in the air. Great fun. Take it up a little higher. Great fun with sort of invisible areas. If you want to create any sort of invisible barriers, that's how you do it. But if I go back in here and I turn invisible back in, it brings them back. Now the next trick is actually collidable, right? So if I hit collidable off, so it's invisible, but it's not collidable. And what happens now if I come back in here? If you watch through the main camera, I'm literally passing through surfaces like they're not even there. So that's how you make sort of like invisible items that you can just pass through. Like if you're doing a fun sort of haunted maze and you want people running through the walls, then that's how you do it. But there's a lot of uses for that. Okay, so that is that out the way. The animations I'm going to very quickly show you as well. We are heading towards the end of the video, guys, so if you're still with me, well done. So if I go into the properties on this, so again, move the stick in, push the stick up on the dot, and it brings up this black menu. So what we're going to do is I'll set Collidable back on. I'm going to set it to animated, okay? And then what I can do is I can say, well, record. And so from the moment I start moving and turning this, it'll record. Ready? Whoa, like that. And then I can say, right, stop. Now it can say, loop it. Yeah, I want to loop it continuously, maybe. Or, no, I'm going to do back and forth, I think. And I'll say play and start. And then what I can do is, I can leave the speed as 1, which is the speed that I actually recorded it. If I wanted that to be lower, I'd say like 0.5 would be half the speed, or 2 would be twice. So if I go play on that, you can actually see that's now animating the object. So if I sort of jump in, and because the object is now set back to collidable, you can also, you should be able to stamble it, yeah, kind of. Still there. But once it's animated, you can rotate it and it plays out its animation anyway. So if I just hit play on that now, I should be able to get on top of this because I know it. Oh man, that's tricky. Yeah, okay, we're just surfing this random block. But it's so much fun. Okay, you do a lot of things with that, like if you're doing sort of any parkour jumping puzzles, obviously you can have animated blocks that do random things. There are smoother ways of animating in Horizons, but they involve scripting, so I'm not going to cover that in this session. But do tune into future sessions and we'll do some simple scripted animation techniques. Like rotations are so easy, you can do them in sort of 2 lines, but it's not for this video, I'm afraid. Okay, so last thing I'll cover here actually will be managing multiple objects. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly hit stop on that, and I'm gonna turn him back to a non-animated object. So if I have, say, I'm gonna use the duplicate button to create a lot of objects. Okay, now That's great, but over time what happens is if I want to like multiple select these and move them all at once. So what I can do is I can hold down the trigger on my right controller and I just slide them through. So I'm actually selecting them all. Now you can see I've selected them all in a block. Notice this sort of bounding box is at a bit of an angle. It's basically copying the axis of the first object that I selected. So if I select this object, which is a bit flatter, and then I select everything else, so I've still got that button held down just for the selection operation, and now I've let go. You see the box is actually a bit more sensible. So let's create that bounding box, and I can pick it up and turn it around all as one unit. Equally also, if I bring up the properties, I can set all to not visible all at once, or I can bring them all back, and the same goes with like Collidable, etc. When I come to it, I can sign scripts. I can do a lot of things with that. But one last thing I'll do is, if you've made a whole lot of objects and you think, oh, do you know what, I want to group them together because they should never be just separately editable. So you can do something called a group, which if I again highlight all of these, and now if I flick the stick here to the left, you can see there's a little group icon, which is this one here. Boop. And that now changed them all together. So they now function as one unit. There are ways to, but if you ungroup it again, so if I click there, if I just flick the stick to the left again, and there's a definite noise which comes in, like you probably can't hear it on the video, but it's that it goes upwards if you're grouping things together, and it goes with sort of a downwards pop if they're coming apart. So I can sort of edit them, then regroup them. There are ways, guys, to edit things without actually ungrouping them once they're grouped, and that's the zoom in control, which I won't cover on this video, but it's this thing here. Come on, I'll quickly do it. So if I go into here, I can actually notice everything goes quite dark because I'm editing the groups, so I can edit things without ungrouping them. It's quite tricky, and if you double click too fast in here, it'll take you out like this. So when everything comes back normal sort of colors, it means you're outside the group, and if you wanted to go back in, you have to go back in again, and you can fiddle with your hearts to your heart's desire. But yeah, double click or just select the so I always say point at the sky and double click, and it'll take you out of zoom in. And now once I go in, once I go in, I can then again jump around to my heart's content on this. So yeah, that's really it. I'll give you a little Brucey bonus. So a lot of people want to try and build like a little house on their first go. So the way you do that, now anyone who's come from a 3D editing background will be familiar with something called a Boolean operation. And a Boolean operation allows you to actually cut holes in things basically, and various other techniques. But you can't do that in Horizons, unfortunately. So what we can do is I'm going to leave my snapping mode on, okay? And I can basically make this quite small. And remember, snapping is fine to turn on and off, right? So if I wanted to make that a little skinnier, I can do that. Another way I could do it is leave snapping on. You'll notice when I'm dragging and it's snapping, there's a little fine-tune button on my right hand. If I just flick the stick up, it allows me to go smooth without turning off snapping. And if I flip the stick again, it goes back to that. So I'm going to use fine-tune on this one just to make that quite small. And I'm going to expand it, okay? And then what I'm going to do is, that's a very small house. Each red line here actually is roughly a meter. That's it, you know, where to visualize it at least. Yeah, if you make doors that are the right sort of height, for example, and you treat these as meters, you'll be in the right spot. So anyway, what I do is I grab a snap point here on this, and then I can turn this and leave him up against this. Oops, there you go. Got him. That's a perfect fit. And then what I could do is pull that down a little bit. And then instead of punching a hole through it to make the window, what we do is we slide across. And then we go to duplicate. We grab the arrow, we slide across to this snap point, okay? And then I'm going to size across to here. And then I'm going to use this again. And you can see I've actually got another duplicate here. I'm going to snap this bit just to up here. Pull this up to just about, I don't know, here-ish. And then that's from 3 objects I've basically created my sort of whole punch out in a wall. And that allows me to walk through perfectly. So that wraps up today's tutorial, guys. I think that was about 30 minutes-ish. So I'm going to stop there. But yeah, good. And good luck on building. I hope I've given you enough really to power maybe your first few days of building, if not even your first week. But it's a fun thing, and a lot of people find it quite therapeutic. It's like playing with a big Lego set. So do have fun, right? Don't take it too seriously. It's designed to be easy. I'll tell you what, it's quite hard to go back to doing traditional 3D modeling applications when you spent a lot of time in here, because being able to be inside your builds and walk around them and using sort of two hands, the sort of pinch and pull, is next level brilliant, to be honest. It's yeah, good. Anyway, that's enough jibber jabber for me. I hope it's been informative, and I'll see you for the next one, whenever that is. Bye.